listening to the Marketing Personalities Podcast, a podcast for growth-minded entrepreneurs that serves up valuable insight and interviews about aligning your marketing strategy with your personality type. Because here's the deal. You shouldn't have to feel fake and salesy in order to grow your business. And you no longer have to. Your marketing strategy can feel good to implement and it can work. You can attract the right clients and customers to your business and grow your profits, all while staying true to who you naturally are. So in the name of honest business growth, bring your unique talents, perspectives, and personality to the table. And join us on this week's podcast episode to discover marketing that feels good for you. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with Racheal Cook, who is the founder of the CEO Collective. Racheal, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brit.
So Racheal and I are here today to discuss a bunch of things. First of all, how Racheal, as an INFJ, is using long-form content to drive her marketing strategy and attract paying clients without having everything depend on a sales conversation or a consult call, right? Plus, I have a feeling Racheal and I are going to go and get deep into why it's so important to be yourself in your marketing strategy and your business strategy, because that's what she does. And I think she does a really great job at it. So we're going to get to all that. But before we do, you've got to get to know Racheal. So Rach, tell us about your entrepreneurial life right now. What do you have your hands in?
I have my hands in lots of things. We are recording this right as I have retired a program that I'd been running for over 8 years. And I'm kind of shifting a little bit and leaning more into a message I'm really excited about, which is helping more women entrepreneurs take that big leap from solopreneurship into truly seeing themselves as a CEO in their business. So a lot of that for me, it looks like running a quarterly event called the CEO Retreat. I have an annual mastermind called the CEO Accelerator, and launching in 2020 is the CEO Collective. So you're like the first interview I've done to talk about what the CEO Collective will be, but it will be a membership and mastermind community for women entrepreneurs really looking for an elevated, more strategic conversation about how to grow a business that matters.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to dig into that funny little place of transition now. So you just said that you're retiring a program in your business that you've done for 8 years, which I think this happens, but we don't get a lot of talk about this. And that just kind of underlines the fact that, hey, you've been in this for a while. Like, you're not new to this game. You've been in here, you've been grinding it out and figuring a lot of stuff out. I'm sure so many pivots and iterations and all of that happening along the way. And now you're at a place where you're making a strategic shift in a certain direction. So tell me about the pull towards servicing and helping this specific, basically, person, but also the specific person in the specific transition of going from solopreneurship to being a true CEO. What is pulling you in that direction?
So many things. And you're right. I have been in this for a long time. I've been consulting and working with small businesses for about 15 years now, and 12 of those working on my own business. So what has been driving this for me, and this is just one of several iterations of my business and where I'm going, is that, each time you hit a new level in your business, you notice new challenges. And I remember when I really was ramping up my business, there's so much information out there in the world right now, especially in the online coaching and consulting space, about how to get started, how to launch your online business, how to get your first few clients, et cetera. But I remember entering the space of, having multiple six figures, making some bigger decisions, going after bigger moves in my business. And I felt like there was no one to turn to. I could not find a mentor who had done what I was doing. I could not find anyone who understood what the potential was in my business. I was really struggling to find other peers who were also at the same level. It felt like everybody was still very much at a super beginner stage in their business. And there's also in the women's entrepreneurial community, depending on where you go, but a lot of women are almost scared to say that they have a vision of creating something bigger. They almost hold themselves back. And it's very much like, well, this is just something I'm doing for fun, or this is just something I'm doing to have a job that I like. But they're not many talking about, how do we really build a larger business? How do we create more impact beyond just a lifestyle business? So I started noticing this conversation, I mean, years and years ago when I broke through the multiple six-figure mark, and I just wasn't sure where to turn. And as I started building my own community of women, because that's what I do. I just go out there and find more who are like me. And I was attending events and I was connecting with people and I was like seeking them out. I'm like, where are these smart, savvy women who get what I'm up to and who are also up to similar things? And I realized there's just this massive gap in the marketplace. And some of the challenges that women specifically come up against is when there's a lack of mentorship and there's a lack of both an emotional and a strategic support system for them, then they're kind of flying blind trying to figure out what the next step is in their business. And for me, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to more women who are unapologetically ambitious, who want to build something beyond just them, and just start having a bigger conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the shift has started. And honestly, I am a slow mover. I tell people I am definitely the tortoise, not the hare. I love my research. So I was kind of piloting these ideas and testing these things for years before I started pivoting. And really this pivot started about 2 years ago when I launched the first CEO retreat, because I was like, what would happen if I did the same level of consulting I used to do for bigger organizations, but for small business owners? And the results were incredible to me. It wasn't about more content. It wasn't about, all the tactics and everything. It was really about getting laser focused and thinking more strategically, thinking bigger like a true CEO. And that's when I was starting to really tell myself, okay, I need to lean into this more, because there are more women who are craving this, and there's just not many places having that level of conversation. There's a lot of information out there about tactics. There's a lot of information out there about, what's the next hot trendy thing. But if you really are building something beyond you, you have to start having a bigger conversation, a higher level conversation. And that's what really has been driving me, is just my own journey in a lot of ways.
Wow, that's so good. Well, I can definitely sit here and say, yeah, let's have that bigger conversation. I can definitely see all of what you just outlined and reflected to me. I can definitely support, yes, that is a need. That's definitely a need. And I have to go back to where you said that you are definitely more of a tortoise than a hare. And I love that you brought this up. I don't know if you've listened to the Malcolm Gladwell. He did like a 2-part series on his podcast recently about being a tortoise or a hare, and how in a lot of parts of our society, the hare is very respected, and especially now, respected and praised. And a lot of things that we have to go through, especially in schooling, really praises the hare and not the tortoise. Even though like the tortoise way of life is definitely, it's a way of life and it's totally valid, and sometimes gets better outcomes. Like if you can truly lean into that natural tendency to, it's not like you go slow, it's that you think about an issue or a problem in a different way, in a more kind of, tell me if I'm right, because I can't say that I identify as a tortoise. I do identify more as a hare, but from what I understand, it's more this in-depth, let me get into the pool of all that's going on in this problem and really start to embody everything that's happening so I can get to a solution. And now that I say that out loud, it's like, oh, that kind of feels very INFJ like. As we know, you're an INFJ, and that feels like, ooh,
Yeah.
right? We want to go deep. We want to get in there. We don't necessarily want to look at the problem from this outsider's perspective. It might feel more comfortable to get in there and be surrounded by it and really start to embody it. So then we can come up with the right solution. Am I at all kind of like feeling into that properly, or what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think that's so accurate for me, especially. I think I'm somebody who I take my time, especially with the understanding the problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Often people think they know what the problem is, but that's not actually the problem. You've got to go dig a little bit deeper and
Mm-hmm.
unravel it to really get to the heart of whatever the specific challenge is. And this is where someone who I would say is more of a hare, like somebody who's more of that fast action taker, they just start trying all the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like that. I'm going to sit back and observe and watch and look at it from multiple angles and probably watch a few documentaries and read a million books and go down my own like huge research process, because I want to do the unraveling first to get clear on what the problem actually is instead of just throwing things at it. And yeah, that's kind of, I think a lot of people who are similarly wired to me, when we get curious about something, we just start wanting to look at it from a lot of angles and try to figure out what's really going on here and how can we really get to the heart of whatever this is.
I'll be really curious to hear from other INFJs in the audience. I tend to have a lot of INFJs in my audience. I know that they say it's like the rarest type of the 16, but man, y'all are entrepreneurs or something because you're everywhere in my world. But I'll be curious to hear how other INFJs relate or not relate to this tortoise or hare conversation. Because as I'm thinking about other INFJs that I know, I do recognize this more because of the priority and respect for depth. They might identify more with that slower pace. No, let me get in there. Let me really understand what's happening here. Why is this happening? Like that deeper, deeper, deeper depth to the why. So then they can, like you said, find clarity in what's going on. So then you can rise above it, solve it, fix it, whatever, move on from it, whatever that looks like. That is interesting. Also, I have to say, in the entrepreneur space, for sure, I think being a hare is more praised. And so,
Yeah.
like always doing something, always having something to offer. Like one day you're working on this and like, boom, you've solved it. You're on to the next thing. And it just kind of seems now, I think Instagram stories probably shows us this a little bit more exaggerated than in real life because all we see is the highlight reel. But being a more slow, methodical, in-depth person in business, have you bumped up to any hesitation around that or some, I don't know, any personal growth kind of things that you've had to work through as it relates to that pace and the way that you've done things so far?
So, something that has come up for me, especially because I've just been in this whole online consulting coaching space for so long, is I've definitely had the thought of, well, if I just did a quick training on insert like sexy topic of the day, I would be rolling in all the internet monies.
Uh-huh.
And I've thought that to myself so many times because I've seen people who seemingly pop out of nowhere. They go deep into like one specific tactic thing that's really popular. And it's like their business explodes very, very quickly. But it feels so not aligned for me because I cannot, I just don't want to. I guess I really should say it's not that I can't, it's that I really don't want to. It's out of alignment for me to focus on just one piece when I am someone who seizes the entire system of how things work. That's why I'm a strategist. Like, I don't want to just talk about one little tactic and not talk about how that tactic fits in the entire ecosystem of somebody's business. Because I see a lot of people, and often I'll have people come to me after they've purchased a million different trainings or they've hired all these people who are very like tactic focused, but they don't have a big picture plan or a big picture strategy. And that's hard because we do live in a world where no one really understands what strategy means anymore. They're confusing strategy and tactics. And when that's the
Amen.
case,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
When they
Yes.
don't see the difference between strategy and tactics, they think that doing one little thing on Instagram is the thing that will change their business. And I'm like, no, that's just one little lever you can pull. And there are a million other things out there. And the tactic that is so sexy right now might not work in a week, in a month. Things change really quickly. But when you have a clear strategy and you know where the tactics fit in and how they relate to each other, then you're able to have that more solid business. So I have often thought to myself, man, I could just roll out a fun little tactical training and be great. But then I just would hate myself for it because I know that where I really reside is helping people see the big picture and helping them see how all these things fit in.
Yeah, it's that more holistic way to approach anything. And in this case, business. I feel that deeply. I recognize that in myself, even kind of focusing my message around marketing at times has felt a little pigeonholey just because that's not really an adjective, but go with me here. Just because I recognize that you can apply this self awareness piece that is at the core of my message, not just to your marketing, but your business strategy, the way that you plan your year, the way that you go about life. It's like this whole holistic way about doing life. And right now, I just talk about marketing. And even it's still marketing strategy, but even that sometimes feels like it's too small. So when we are able to see the big picture and we're also willing to go into the depths of all that's there, we might bump up against this idea of you need to niche down, you need to move fast. Like you need to make a name for yourself in this one specific thing and you got to move fast, move fast, move fast. I can totally see how that could kind of create some tension and a little rub, if that's how you're wired,
Yeah.
but that's not how the online entrepreneur world wants to frame things. You might find yourself in a little bit of a weird place.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've bumped up against quite a lot. And I think, like you, so I would say that your business, like the marketing personalities, because it's so deeply entrenched in the marketing piece of it, I would call that like an on ramp to what could be the bigger body of work for you down the road,
Yes.
right? Like people are coming in with the marketing lens, but there's so much more that you can dive into. And even in our conversations, when I had my review with you, we were talking about sales and we were talking about how this all fits in and all these different pieces, but marketing is the on ramp for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I've also had a few different on ramps in my business because big picture strategy is something that not everybody gets or understands. It can feel very overwhelming. And so for me, one of the on ramps into my work that has always made sense for people has been when I talk about planning and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I talk about planning and productivity and I put together frameworks for how I plan and for how I'm strategic around the way that I manage my time and run my team and all these planning and productivity topics, it becomes such a clear on ramp into the bigger picture. Once they realize they can get strategic about the way they're running their calendar, their schedule, et cetera, they start to see, oh, this is what strategy means. This is how it all fits in. And then I can expose people and lead them into, okay, now let's talk about strategy in these different areas.
Okay, so we found it. We have found the gem in this conversation already. So, this idea of an on ramp is brilliant, especially for anyone out there who is creating content and trying to use their content to lead into the bigger picture of what they really do. And so this is perfect for INFJs, obviously, because I wanted you on the podcast because we had just had your strategy check session. I got to look into like the kind of more of the depths of what's going on in how you're leveraging your marketing personality type, how you're leveraging your content, how it's then leading people to become your paying clients. And as I watched, this isn't just like a beginner's strategy, right? This isn't just like, well, I'm thinking about doing this, so let's work on it. This is something that you've been iterating on for years. And now you're at a place where you've got this adjustment and more of a focus and getting a look at your strategy and checking it out, making sure that it makes sense for that future that you have planned. That gave me such a great opportunity to see like, wow, there's some really good stuff going on in here. And I think a lot of INFJs would love to see this example because it's really well thought out and it's not just the beginner level. You can see how an INFJ can have their content strategy, not just launch a business or grow it in the first year or two, but really long term. We're looking long term here. So let's dig into this content strategy, especially as it relates to these on ramps, which I'm totally using that. Like that, we need to like trademark that. That is super smart because it's such a great visual. So you are an INFJ, which means I'm going to just kind of run through like some really easy, understandable things about the INFJ, especially for the listener who might not be an INFJ or they haven't listened to any of the INFJ episodes yet. So, INFJ personality type, these types of people are willing and wanting to go to the depths of any conversation, any topic. We kind of have already hit that. Also, your why really matters. And to start with a why and to know what mission you're on is going to be crucial. If you're not really sure why you're doing something, you're out. Like you're not going to bring your best energy. But if you know why you're doing it and you can internally say, yes, I believe in that mission, you are fully in, probably more than anybody else. Like, so the why, that's where you have to start. Also, you're a very natural sharer of the good stuff. So when you identify some, when you get in there, you start learning stuff, you start figuring some stuff out, you naturally want to be like, without even thinking about it, you wonder like, oh, who needs to see? Oh yeah, Jenny. Yeah, I need to tell Jenny about this. And then you listen to something over here and you're like, oh, I got to tell Sammy about this, So it's just a natural sharing of the stuff that you're finding and stuff you're figuring out. And as an INFJ, based on the marketing personality type framework, your best marketing strategy includes sharing long form content and using that content to lead and indoctrinate people toward your larger framework, your larger way of doing business and what you're selling, what you're offering. And I'm going to give the listeners just a little bit more background on that. Why content, long form content is so powerful for the INFJ is because the last thing an INFJ wants to do is get on the phone with somebody or even in an automated funnel, try to sell something that the buyer is really not ready to buy. That whole idea, like offering something to someone, even if like maybe the person does technically need it, but they don't know why they need it. And there's a little bit of question around like, are they really going to be able to get anything out of this? If that question is at all involved, the INFJ is like, nope, don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. I cannot align myself with that. But if they can use their content and really good indoctrination to lead someone to that sale, and they know that that person that is about to buy that thing from them is fully indoctrinated, they know what they're getting into, they know they need it, they know they want it, everything's good. So that's kind of the overall. Is that feeling right, Racheal? I mean, I'm watching you on the video and you're nodding.
That's
so it's like,
absolutely right.
Yeah. So we're on pace there.
Yep.
So you can see with that background, everybody that's listening, you can see why content can be so crucial to get that content out into that prospective client's hands, in their inboxes, on their feeds. They have many opportunities to say, oh yeah, I can vibe with that. Or that's not really for me. And giving them all those opportunities. So once they do get to that sales conversation or that sales page, it's not a surprise. It doesn't feel like it's pushed or forced or fabricated. It's just like, oh, yes, of course I need that. So, Racheal, now that I'm done with all that, let's talk about how you use content to drive your marketing strategy. What types of content are you publishing regularly, and how does that equate to, revenue and clients to serve?
Yeah. So my core content is my podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO. And I've had a podcast in some shape or form for probably 5 or 6 years now. I have tested other modes of sharing content, and some challenges I ran into. One, when I write exhaustively long blog posts. So I would run into them just being, Google likes how long they are, but readers aren't really always accustomed to reading a 3,000 to 6,000 word blog post, which is normal, like for the type of content I create. So I was like, okay, I did that. I really tried to do the whole like under 1,000 word blog post. It is so hard for me. It's just doesn't work. No surprise. I've definitely played around with video. And actually about a year ago, I did a whole year of Facebook Live videos. I did 100 Facebook Lives in a year.
Wow.
And what I found with that was, even though I don't mind video, like I like video, and I think it definitely fosters a little bit like higher level of intimacy with whoever's consuming your content, because they can see you, right? They can see you, they can hear you. You're more three-dimensional than just reading something on a page. But the nature of video is that when you are a long form person, most views drop off really quickly. Like the best length of a video for any sort of marketing is really under that like 8-minute mark. that is incredibly difficult for me.
Mhm.
So I'll never be like a superstar YouTuber. It's just not going to happen. The videos were too long. So podcasting really fit me best because the average podcast listener is listening to like over 6 hours of podcasts in a week.
Mhm.
And they're excited about long form content. You know, once they press play, you can get them past that first minute. They will happily listen to you for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. They like the long form content.
Mhm.
So I found podcasting is my preferred outlet. And I really have doubled, tripled down on that, where it's the majority of where people are getting anything from me is via my podcast. And then all of the rest, like I still send out a newsletter. It tells people about the podcast. I send out social media. Most of it is related to the podcast or other themes, you know, my core kind
Mhm.
of topic areas that I talk about a lot. But for me, the podcast has been the biggest part of my overall content strategy.
Mhm. And then you have other things throughout the year that you use as short-term on-ramps, if you will. Like the podcast is always there. It can always be found. That's where you're going to be delivering your most consistent, regular content. And then at other times of the year, you're choosing to ramp up to something that you're going to offer through short-term on-ramps. And as I've watched you, and just like I see a lot of other INFJs doing, just because it comes so natural, like literally throwing your audience so many helpful things in a short amount of time. Like if you can't get a result out of what Racheal's giving you or what most other INFJs are giving you, like I don't know what you're doing, because they are giving you so much helpful stuff to really get you going. So tell us about those. I think you have one coming up really, really soon at the time this episode is going live. Tell us about those short-term on-ramps that you choose to do.
Yeah. So one of the things that I started playing around with a few years ago, and like you said, I don't love launches, like traditional
Mhm.
online marketing launches where you're trying to get brand new people who've never heard about you to buy from you within a 2-week period. It just never felt 100% right for me, but I understood the psychology behind why content was structured the way it was structured.
Mhm.
So I started thinking to myself, well, what if instead of doing like a launch where I'm gating everything and focused on getting brand new people in all the time, I know my people, once they find me, if they're listening to me, if they're following along with me, they become super loyal. And I knew how long my sales cycle is with different things I was promoting. So I was like, well, what if instead of having this gated launch and trying to shift them off my main content platform, what if instead I just had content freely available on the podcast and ran these series? Or you could call them challenges, you could call them mini training series. But basically, anytime I'm getting ready to open the doors to something, I will ramp up with a very strategically structured podcast series, really. And sometimes I'll do them in other media formats. So, one series I ran earlier this year was ramping up to opening the doors for my CEO accelerator. We had 2 podcasts going out a week for, I don't know, a couple weeks before I opened the doors. I sold out the accelerator to 8 people for $15,000 each in 10 days because of the way that I structured that
Wow.
podcast promotion of a series of, I think it was like 6 or 7 episodes. And like you said, I didn't have to really get on sales calls. They heard about it. They filled out an application. We're getting on a call. They have a few questions and they're in. There's no pushy, hardcore sales pitch in this. It was just like, if this is what you're looking for, I'm here for you.
I love
Right
it.
now, as we're recording this, I'm getting ready to ramp up to a annual challenge we run called Plan Your Best Year Ever, where my goal is to help people walk away after 5 episodes or a 5-day challenge with their 2020 profit plan. So actually knowing like, what am I selling? What am I marketing? What am I doing each month of the coming year? This is something we've run now. This will be our 3rd or 4th year running this series, but I'll share it on the podcast and drive people back to get all the workbooks, because we've put together some pretty comprehensive workbooks to go along with each episode. And I'll also have other, like, it's an ecosystem to me. That's how I think of my sales strategy now. It's an ecosystem. I'll have this going out on my Facebook, on my Instagram. Everywhere we'll just be telling people, go listen to this episode, go get the workbook. Go listen to this episode, go get the workbook.
Mhm.
And then they'll be invited to join me for the next thing, which is our CEO retreat, where they'll take that plan that they created in that free series and learn how to break it down into a 90-day action plan. So they actually know what they need to do week after week after week after week. So everything I do when I'm thinking of the way I'm structuring my content, it's always reverse engineering from what is the next thing I'm offering and what do they need to hear from me in order to be excited and ready to take that next step. And then I plan accordingly. So it's kind of my unlaunching. There's no crazy funnel system here going on. It's just really just sharing my content across multiple platforms.
And starting with that one core hero piece of content that you already know feels good and easy for you to create, and that you've built up over time to have an audience there. And that's your podcast episode. Like
Yeah.
that I think from how I'm hearing you, that is what feels like the key to the unlaunch cycle. It's like, where are you showing up consistently? What is that content platform that you've already developed? And instead of pulling people off of that content platform and pulling them over to something different, just keep them right there and deliver what they need to
Yep.
know in a time frame that makes sense so they can stick with you and they can get through everything, and then give them that next thing that they obviously want and need from going through that content. And that's boom. I mean, I think it's so brilliant. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that I found within your marketing strategy, this kind of stuff that I'm like, this needs to be shared for these INFJs. I mean, if you're an INFJ or something close or anything that Racheal is saying here that kind of resonates with you and you want to write, then write. If you want to podcast, then podcast. If you want to do videos, do videos. That's fine. The idea isn't to, oh, everybody needs to do a podcast, consistently publish to it, and then do this content series. No, it's more about how can you show up consistently with your content so then you can utilize that platform that you've created for yourself when you're ready to offer something new and or revised, whatever your audience needs, in a way that feels good for you to offer it. Like that's the key here. And I really like how you're showcasing that. So I'm curious, you've tapped into your marketing personality type within the last year or so, but you had been doing business prior to that, like for a long, years and years and years before
Yeah.
that. So take us into how you were marketing your company before findingmarketingpersonalities.com. And did you ever try anything, especially in the beginning days, that you felt like you kind of had to, but didn't really, now that you know your marketing personality type, didn't really align?
Oh, yes. So many things. Well, keep in mind, when I started my business, I mean, I come from a traditional consultancy background. So
Mhm.
there were a lot of times where when my business was getting started, it was very much relationships, referrals. I was going around teaching seminars and workshops and things of that nature. So I knew that for me, connection was really important, and it's always has been. Anytime I've veered away from connecting deeply with people, it's just not as effective for me. But I know if I can talk to people, if I can get in front of them, really get to know who they are, I will always walk away with a new relationship, a new client, whatever. And I've always just been a teacher
Mhm.
as long as I can remember. When you're in a consulting background, I'm used to digging in and doing a ton of research and building out frameworks and then teaching and training how to execute on that. But when I took my business online, I had a lot, and I took my business online in 2011
Mhm.
after I had my twins, and I needed to be able to not travel because I now had two infants at home.
Mhm.
And I remember some of the things coming out I tried and I was just really frustrated by. At that time, things that people were talking, social media was becoming more popular. I think Facebook might have just started having pages at that
Mhm.
point. A lot of talk about YouTube. And it was a very, again, tip and trick heavy. So if you search on YouTube, I probably have some old videos because everyone was wanting to know, well, how do I use social media? And I was like, well, here's one thing you can do on this. Here's
Mhm.
one thing you can do on this. And that kind of got me started, but I knew that's not what I wanted to do long term. Other things that I feel like I've tried a little bit of everything. I don't mind experimenting a bit. I definitely have had the automated sales funnels. I've done webinars. I've done all sorts of things. But the things that have worked best for me have always been again, this series of content that builds on each other. So I remember one time, it was probably 2014 when I did this. I had just finished creating what was going to be like a very PLF style launch. I had the videographer over. We recorded this 3-part video series. It was going to be very fancy. And I was getting ready to share all that content, and it just felt so off to me. And even though I had all these beautifully shot videos and I had like my hair and makeup done and all the stuff, I was just like, this doesn't feel right. So I threw out a survey to my audience and said, okay, guys, what are you struggling with? And this was right before New Year's of 2014. And they were all telling me, I'm struggling with productivity. I'm struggling with planning, whatever. And so I scrapped that launch and ran a 28-day challenge. And that 28-day challenge first was insane. I don't recommend a 28-day challenge to anyone. It's a lot. But it literally changed the trajectory of my business because it was so incredibly popular. People were loving it. And they were like, I've never been through a free program that's this involved or this valuable. And it turned into my first book. It turned into the beginning of the podcast. Like I rolled that challenge into so many different formats because it was just so powerful for people. And that's when I realized whether you call it a challenge or not, it was a series of content designed to help people really get through a full experience and a real taste of what it's like to work with someone like me. I was able to, like you used the word indoctrinate, but I was really able to start with simple, small things that they could do to shift out of, the challenge they were in. And by the end of the challenge, they were thinking more big picture. I had gotten them to a more strategic place. And that was when I started realizing, okay, this is the right approach for me, is designing these bigger pieces of content. And like I said, I took that challenge, I turned it into a book. I transcribed the entire thing, had it edited and turned it into a book. It's still available on Amazon. I recorded all the challenges separately and put them out on my podcast. I use that thing and we still run the challenge once in a while. I've shortened it a lot. But that's when I realized that was the way that I could best get someone who's brand new to me and help them go through this transformative process to where the end of it, they're excited to learn more.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love so much about that story is, I love that it ended up victorious, right? And it got to a place where it worked in ways that you didn't even realize it was going to work. But the coolest thing about that is that you started that with, I was going to do the launch. I had the videos and everything was beautiful and I got my hair done and my makeup's done and all this stuff. And the video team and everything was perfect. And I'm sure that wasn't like inexpensive to invest in, and you got it all done. And then you said, this doesn't feel right. This just doesn't feel right. And you pulled it back and you knew that within yourself, you were self-aware enough to realize that that doesn't feel right. So I'm going to go back to what I know. I'm going to go back to my audience, see what they actually need help with, which is always key to know, right? And how does it feel right for me to deliver this, right? And that indoctrination series, challenge, whatever you want to call it, but giving them what they need over a long-ish period of time so they can, like you said, see what it feels like, what it truly is like to work with someone like you. I think that I love that story. So now we are at the end of 2019. You and I have just had a strategy check session within the last couple of weeks where we discussed your strategy. We looked at all the ways a client could find you, like you, trust you enough to invest in your offers. And you're looking at 2020 and it's so close. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what did you get out of that strategy check session as you were looking at your 2020 plan and kind of making sure it all aligned? From your perspective, what did you get out of that?
So many things. I actually had to pull out my notes again before we jumped on today. But one of the things that you and I really talked about was, going back and examining things that had worked for me before and not falling into the pressure it feels like to have the automated evergreen funnel situation, which is one of those things that as you scale your business, you're definitely thinking about, well, how can I continue to grow without having to constantly be launching? And when we kept again, we were unraveling all the different layers of what was possible. And one of the things we kept coming back to was using this content in a new and different way and really setting it up in a way that, again, it does lead people to know, like, and trust me. It helps them understand the way that I work. It helps them see the frameworks that I work within, but it does so in a very low pressure, high value way, which
Mhm.
is much more aligned with me. Like, if
Mhm.
you ever get anything from me that feels super high pressure, then I must be freaking out for some reason or
Yeah.
another.
Or someone
But
hacked
I
like your
think
active
that's one,
campaign account or something.
right? Exactly. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that we talked about. How could we really explore new ways to enroll people into my programs without that high pressure, without that
Mhm.
kind of launch craziness that tends to be so pervasive right now? And that to me just felt like such a breath of fresh air, because I think one of the challenges for anyone who's trying to build out effective marketing right now is that we just hear again and again that, like, this is what's working, this is what's working, you have to do it this way, but it's always rubbed me the wrong way. So that's probably the biggest thing for me that I took away was, you know what, let's just double down again. How can we take what is working that we've
Mhm.
seen with this kind of series of content and just continue to map those out in a way that brings people into my world?
Mhm.
So that was amazing. That was
Awesome.
amazing for me. And it just helped me feel really confident that this is the right way for me to do this, that I don't have to go back into a way that didn't feel right to me.
Amen. Amen. If it doesn't feel right, if it feels fake and salesy or forced or too complicated, it's probably not your best marketing strategy. So I love that. So take us now into the vision for your company in the next year. Where are we heading with this?
Yeah. So now we are, like I said, we're shifting a bit because we'll be rolling out the CEO Collective April 18th, 2020. That is the date on the calendar that it will be open. And that will really be like all roads will lead towards the CEO Collective. I will still be hosting my quarterly CEO retreats. And then every quarter after the retreats, we will be having an encouragement period to join us for the CEO Collective, which is really bringing together all of the different strategies and frameworks I've created over the last decade or so, plus mentorship, an entire team of mentors and coaches. Not just me, because I'm definitely not the only smart person in the world that you should listen to, but I'm bringing in some of my amazing peers, like my accountant and my lawyer and my finance, and like all the different sides of a business that everyone should have access to, but I feel like we often don't have access to. But the vision for the CEO Collective is that you'll have access to the training, you'll have access to the mentorship, you'll have access to the community that you need if you're really in that place where you're ready to take your business beyond just you and make a bigger impact in the world. So that's
So
what we're
good.
working on.
So good. Okay.
Yeah.
And then right now, as this episode goes live, November 21st, 2019, we have about a month, a month and like a week, but with a lot of holidays in there in between before we hit 2020. And you're going to help us get ready for 2020, right? Like you've got some stuff even going on in the next month and a couple weeks before we hit January 1 that's going to help us get organized, right? So tell us about that.
Yes, every year we run Plan Your Best Year Ever. It's 5-part series, a 5-day challenge to really look at how you are setting yourself up for success in the year to come. And one of the things that I love about this is it's not just about business. We also weave in, what does your life need to look like next year? What is it that you actually want? What is your definition of success? Because for me, if it's not aligned, then you can make all the business plans in the world, and if it doesn't fit your life and what's really important to you as a human being, it won't matter. So we go through this process to help people make sure that their life and their business is aligned, set your goals, and then walk away with your 12-month profit plan. And it's 100% free. I should probably charge for this as just the standalone course, but I love running it, and it's available on demand for people to start going through right away.
They can get it like right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. All right. I thought there was like a date that I was okay. Well, if you're listening to this right now, November 2019, or how long will it be available? Do you have an end date?
We actually have tested this a few different ways, but we will be leaving it available on demand through the end of January.
Oh.
Because we know some people are super planners who
Mhm.
already have like their calendars and everything already. And then we know there are some people who are just trying to get through the holiday season and they'll get ready in the beginning of the year. So we leave it open for a few months.
Totally. Okay. So tell us where to go to find that. So the super planners like me are going to go there right now and like just dive right in. And then the people who are like, wait, let me, let me just get through the next few weeks. I'll come up to air like January 7th and then I will dive in. So they'll go to this website today, bookmark it, and then come back to it. And once we hit 2020, where can they go?
Yeah, it'll be at rachealcook.com/best year ever.
Awesome. Perfect. I love that. Best year ever. Yes, let's do that. Racheal, thank you so much for being here. This is so exciting. I can't wait for people to go over and see what you're doing and get into best year ever. And also see how you are strategically, intentionally, allowing people to find you, like what you have, trust you, see how it feels to work with you before working with you, essentially, and becoming a paying client. And so INFJs and anyone who feels like they're resonating with this conversation and this strategy can tap into that, watch you do that, and realize that, yes, this is actually a viable way to do things. It doesn't all have to be launch, 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 and feeling super pressured and getting sick every time you do something and all that. So I love the permission slip you've given us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been fun.
Awesome. Okay, so everybody, go find Racheal. The link to her website is in the show notes right here in whatever app you're listening to this right now. So you can click on that. You can go be a part of her best year ever challenge. Click right on it, get in there. I know I'm going to go check it out. And one more thing before you go, I have some news about next week's episode. I don't always preview this, but I'm really excited about next week's episode and I can't wait to tell you about it. So here's the deal. Next Thursday, November 28th, 2019, yes, that is Thanksgiving Day for everyone in the States, I am going to be releasing the 2019 holiday gift guide for entrepreneurs based on personality type. So I have found a bunch of incredible items to gift your business friends, your fellow entrepreneurs, yourself, and I have categorized them by personality type. So how cool is that? I cannot wait to get this into your hands. So next week's episode will be all about that gift guide. I'm going to be reviewing a bunch of those items on the list, telling you where to go to get the entire list. So stay tuned for that. You won't want to miss it, especially if you intend to take advantage of Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday, whatever your flavor of holiday shopping is, that gift guide is something you're going to want to have on hand. So it's coming at you November 28th. And I'll talk to you then. See you later. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Now it's time to connect your marketing strategy to your personality type. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to download your marketing personality type full report. Use the code MPP at checkout to get $10 off. And that's a super special code for podcast listeners as a way to say thank you for being here. In your full report, you'll learn about your personality type, how it relates to the work you do, what your best marketing strategy includes so you can start implementing it right away, what your worst marketing strategy includes so you can avoid it, and so much more. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to get your full report and use the code MPP at checkout to receive $10 off your purchase. And one more thing before you skip on to the next podcast. Would you please share this episode with your entrepreneur friends who also need to feel good about their marketing strategies? Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app right now and share it out via text, Facebook, or my favorite, Instagram. Remember to tag me at Marketing Personalities in the photo so I can be sure to send you a huge high five and thank you for sharing the love. This podcast is edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, and you can find them at podcastengineers.com. That's all for now. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Love ya. Bye.